Right, my Acorn Archimedes A30 or A3010, I was going to say 3010. I've actually already repaired this, but I thought what I'll do is I'll take it apart and show you guys what I did for the repair. Somebody else might find it useful, so I've actually unplugged everything, unplugged it from the mains. I don't know if you've seen one of these computers before, but Acorn is a computer company with a very interesting history and responsible for ARM micros that we see in almost every device these days. So on the back there's you can see that, so parallel RS-232, couple of game ports, mouse, stereo audio. When you plug something in here, it turns off an internal speaker, video output, and also TV modulator, mains on and off switch. And then this panel here is where a mini module expansion goes, and you can see I've got a Watford Electronics IDE hard disk connected in. So let's open her up. And there's just 3 screws at the front. Tidy those away. The lid comes off. You'll notice that in the lid there's this shielding panel with some springy edges, and they spring down on top of the disk drive and this section here and the power supply. So a lot of these older computers, which are plastic cased and you know, all in one, they tend to have a metal shield inside for EMC compliance. Right, so as I said, I've already repaired this computer, so I've been inside already, and you'll notice a bit of evidence of my repair here is this battery that I've slapped on top of the TV modulator. But right, now I've got it open, you can see the keyboard. This is the mains power supply, floppy disk drive, and this is the mini module area with the IDE hard disk module by Watford Electronics. So I think the next thing to do is to try and take the module out. So there's just 2 screws on the back. Right. And then you have to be really gentle to take this out, because it's got 2 rows of a load of pins that go into the main board. So you can see the just 2 sets of single row pins, and if you take the module out sort of one side before the other, then you end up bending a whole load of pins over. In fact, you can see where some of these pins have been bent before. So it's a little bit of a trap for the unwary, but I've taken that out. Okay, and the next thing we need to do is to the keyboard, we've actually lifted up, but it has a ribbon cable that passes through the shielding. I don't know if you can see that passes through. So you have to disconnect this ribbon cable, which is a bit easier said than done. It's actually a flat flex with a it just sort of inserts into a socket in there. I'll actually just go in and now they're disconnected, the keyboard can just slide out like that. So that's the keyboard out. And the next thing to do is to release the shielded board from the plastic case. So, and for some reason they've decided to put in a Allen key type screw. Hex cap head type screw in the middle. Take that out, and then there is two larger screws. These are also Allen key or cap head screws that hold the power supply part of the board down into the case. I think I've got the right Allen key. Note that it seems to be a slightly different size Allen key from the one on the inside. An interesting choice. There's one. Two. And I think we should now find that the board with its shield comes out. So we've taken the plastic case out. When I repaired this, I cleaned all the plastic case. I haven't done what's called a retro bright to the plastics. In fact, they haven't faded too badly. There is a bit of fading. I'll probably talk about that another time. But I think what we want to look at is the electronics of this unit. So that's the next job is to take the top of the shielding off. These RF shields are a bit nasty. There you go. Always a bit tricky to take off, and it's all made of sheet metal. And, it's ideal for cutting yourself. Okay, so now I've removed the, managed to slide it out. There's a wire here for the speaker. We need to disconnect. Disconnect the power to the floppy drive. And the data cable from the floppy drive. Hopefully, ta-da, we're in. So, This A3010 is actually an early model, and Acorn didn't have their new ARM CPU ready with all of the system parts integrated onto one chip. So what they did was they made this sort of like daughter card. They had a code name for it called Adelaide, and it was actually a daughter card to hold all of the sort of test chips that they were working on whilst they waited for the official ARM silicon. I keep calling it ARM, but anyway, to be manufactured. So this is obviously one of the early 3010s. So why I wanted to take this all apart, partly to show you how it comes apart, which isn't too difficult. But on these early ones, which has this Adelaide board, there is a CMOS backup battery which is on the board here, and on the later models this backup battery has been moved, I think, over here near the floppy disk drive or something like that. But these CMOS batteries, over the years, they leak, and when they leak leak corrosive acid all over the circuit board, which destroys tracks if it gets under the particularly if it gets under the surface, the solder mask, then it starts to destroy the tracks. So when I got this unit out of my attic, out of storage, I turned it on, and it worked. It booted up, except for a lot of the rows of the keyboard wasn't working properly. So what I had found when I took it apart, the battery completely corroded. I've got some pictures somewhere, and I'll try and put them into this video. But the battery had corroded the tracks, so I took the battery out and found that the tracks, there was a lot of corrosion on the keyboard connector. So these are the two connectors which take that ribbon cable, the flat flex cable from the keyboard, and all the contacts on here were corroded, as well as these tracks. So I replaced the connectors. I sourced them actually from eBay, and replaced those, and then I checked continuity of each connector, and you can find the service manual with you can find circuit diagrams online. So I found there was a couple of tracks that were broken, so I put in some patch wires just to patch over those, and they come off this keyboard encoder chip. And funnily enough, the keyboard encoder is a PIC microcontroller. So that was the little repair that I had to do. And the other thing is I relocated the battery to put in this rechargeable AA cell here into a holder, so that I could just take the lid off and take the battery out when I need to put it back into storage. A lot of people probably start to worry about replacing capacitors in the power supply. I haven't done that here. It seems to power up and everything works, but one day that's probably a job to do. And so the other thing about the leakage is that the keyboard connector that was completely corroded, the keyboard that connects into that connector are these flat flexes, and this is actually a flexible, these are the two layers of the membrane of the keyboard, so these two flaps go off to the complete overlay of the keyboard, and that's why on the inside of these tracks are actually laid out onto the inside of each connector. and where there had been, I think this is printed carbon, but where the acid had gone on to it completely dissolved the carbon tracks as well. I managed to sort of just patch some length of the tracks using like a conductive ink, and you can just draw some new tracks on here. You can't solder on these because they're, you touch it with the soldering on and it will just dissolve. So that's the only repair that you can do on that. So there you go. I will get this unit back together, and the next thing to look at is the hard disk here. So luckily for me, the hard disk still works, and I was able to get a lot of data off it. So I'll show you a modern replacement for this, and also how to copy data off onto a PC. So I better get this back together.